Continuing on part two of the this episode about the ideals of Comicsgate. The first part dealt with customer service and respect and how Comicsgate as a movement disproved its own claim to wanting that. The second claim that Comicsgate, you know, what they said that Comicsgate was in favor of and what they supported was better comics, which we used to make fun of that as being like the
It's
pack-led
worth,
answer.
yeah, it's just worth making fun of just hearing it on its own. We're better comics.
Yeah, in our
That's not
opinion,
a
but also
category.
objectively.
It's not a strategy.
Yeah, it's
It's
like
not
just
anything.
their ship is the Mondor. It won't go.
The Packlets are, if anything, were smarter than a lot of these
Yes,
comic book
because the
fans.
Packlets were at least admitting that they fucking wanted to scam people. But the Comicsgate claim of wanting better comics is similarly failed through the actions of Comicsgate, the production of Comicsgate, where the quality of the storytelling was, I said questionable at best, but that's just my opinion. It was the storytelling of the majority of Comicsgate's comics was objectively bad, objectively poorly written, even to the
It's
point
very
where its own
clear.
customers and
You
supporters were
just
admitting it.
take a look at them. You can tell they didn't care about what they were making.
Yeah, if you just read some of the Comicsgate comics that they put out, and we will be even getting more into that and proving that when we get into some of the future stories, like about the Jawbreakers prototype book, that kind of thing. In fact, I think we'll be mentioning that coming up soon. But the claim of better comics was debunked by Comicsgate's own actions. Not only the storytelling, like the art is of course always passable, but that's because it's a surface level detail. Any idiot can look at the art and say the art's good, the comic must be good. When that's a typical nerd rationalization, or cope as the squiddos call it these days. But there were, not only was the writing consistently objectively bad for Comicsgate's books, where they would, you just from reading them you could tell there's like no dimension to the characters, there's no story arc, there's no themes, it's just a series of generalized events that carry no meaning and don't even really have much of a conclusion in most cases. And that's all on objective storytelling criticism level. Our opinion also is that that's a bad thing, which isn't really an opinion. It is objective. Like you could make a case that it's subjective for us to say that a bad comic or a badly written comic is bad, because you could say, well, I like a badly written comic, and it's like, okay, that's, I guess that's your opinion, just as how it's our opinion that it's bad. But the thing
You
is,
should try not to like bad comics.
there
Not unless
is
you
there
like
is
them
no
on Prime
opinion.
Code.
There is no opinion that a book like Jawbreakers Lost Souls is bad. It has objective, it makes objective flaws in storytelling that are completely undeniable, unless you
I
go
mean, I
into like
couldn't.
a psychotic
I
break from
tried to
reality or
read
something
it.
like
I
that.
tried to read it so that we could review it, and it was so boring. I just couldn't manage.
Which is an opinion, but at the same time,
That
it's
is an opinion, but
but
how is
it
that?
was
That's
boring
not
also because
something
it had flaws, because
I
because
was. I
it was
wanted to
badly
review
told.
it. I wanted to fuck all that other shit. I wanted to review it because we were going to talk about it. This was supposed to be the big change, the big break. He's finally releasing his own comics like
Yeah,
he said he was going to.
this was the tent pole that was holding up
Yes.
Comicsgate. Was the proof that Comicsgate could make comics better than the SJWs, the social justice warriors, than the leftists and all that had been ruining Marvel and so on. But then the book came out and it was so bad that even its own fans couldn't really praise it, or they couldn't explain why it was good.
He
Most of
lost
the
a lot of
positive
fans.
reviews had like empty platitudes and filler words like it's really cool or has great action or has great art.
Well, I remember in particular the one guy who was reviewing, who was trying to review it to talk about like, because it's like, oh man, we're finally changing the comic system, man. And he was like, well, it's got a bunch of crazy ideas in it, and it's like you're not really talking up the comic that much. And in fact, the guy, he just couldn't. He couldn't really say anything positive about the actual content of the comic. So all he could do was try and make it sound like it was more worthwhile than it was.
One of the other positive reviews of Jawbreaker's Lost Souls was the giant praise of the book was it makes SJWs mad. That was how this other reviewer claimed that the book was good, was SJWs get mad at it, which I don't think you should need us to point out is not a criticism. It's not a critique. It's not
Especially
even
not a
praise.
criticism if it's not true, which that's simply the fact. It wasn't true.
Yeah,
Nobody
in
really
fact,
cared.
that was another point about specifically Jawbreaker's Lost Souls is that it really just validated the SJWs who are like, oh, these Comicsgate people, they can't make good comics. And it's like all Comicsgate did was then prove them right, which we personally said you shouldn't do. By the way, if you're against social justice, first thing you got to do, don't prove them right, and that's what
Don't hand
Comicsgate
them
did.
wins. Stop handing them wins.
Yes. Stop handing
Take a little
yourself
bit
a
of time.
giant L and then posting it too. Don't
Take
do
a
that.
little bit of time not to post your own L's as
Yeah.
your work.
Don't showcase your loss, your defeat, as your fucking greatest victory, because it's kind of gay.
And right after that, he lost a giant amount of traction. Just a whole bunch of his fans, they just abandoned his channel.
Yeah, and then again, there was embarrassment after embarrassment with Richard following that, not only with his comics but his behavior, and then also
His YouTube channel, which was like his main source of fucking attention,
there was
and then
also the
also his own
lawsuit.
Facebook.
There was also the
His,
lawsuit,
his
which, by the way,
motherfucking
we will be getting
Facebook
into that.
account, too.
That's very important, and we'll be
All
getting
this
into that
shit.
one in a future episode. Um, anyway, so
All of this shit.
yeah, so
It
what
just
was
goes on
happening
and on.
was there's the quality of the storytelling, which was objectively bad in many ways that you could fucking go. In fact, in a way, some of their books are a great case study on how to incompetently write or to be bad at writing. But thing is, it's not even the best case study because people prefer to latch onto things like Sonichu or something that's more obviously like over the top incompetent versus a lot of Comicsgate books are just generally
That was one of the other things I absolutely loved seeing was just they couldn't even admit that Sonichu was more popular.
yeah
That
that's
was
that's
just
another
how
thing.
hung up they were.
That's another thing that proves that Comicsgate is incapable of handling objective reality is that we mentioned that Sonichu was more popular than Cyberfrog, and one of them, multiple Comicsgate supporters got so angry, but it's objectively true. You can actually quantify it. Thing is, Comicsgate can't really quantify anything except how much money
They
they
were
steal
very
from the customers.
disturbed. They were so upset, but flustered by that fact. And meanwhile, I'm just like, I don't care about that. I don't even give a shit. It's like, yeah, so what if it's more successful, more popular? It's got more fucking Google hits.
Yeah, it doesn't even necessarily mean anything, but it clearly means something to them because it's all that the movement ever cared about was just fucking empty numbers and
Just
and,
fame.
and posturing. That's all it's
Worshipping
about.
fame.
That's really what the movement's about. It's posturing. But
It's appeal to attention or whatever. What would they call that? The logical fallacy. It's like appeal to fame or some
yeah,
shit
it was
like
like
that.
the appeal to popularity. There's a lot of
Yeah.
logical fallacies that they meet, of course, simultaneously usually. But what also happens is that like one of those guys got mad, like he actually said that Sonichu is more popular than Cyberfrog, and then all I did was go on Google Trends and look for Sonichu, then look for Cyberfrog, and the giant graph that shows Sonichu turns Cyberfrog into a flatline. Just screen
A
capped it and
dead
posted it.
flatline at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, I posted that in reply, and the guy blocked me, which
Which
is how
means he
Comicsgate supporters behave. Is you
He
show them
he
objective
handed
proof of
over
something, and they block you.
victory of the argument over to
In
us,
fact,
so that
Ethan
we
Van
could go
Sciver,
unrefuted forever.
and many, many other people related to Comicsgate have a very long history of blocking people, not for disagreeing, but for proving them wrong. Um, And even us, of course, we've been blocked by Ethan, but that was a long time ago. And That it wasn't even over proving him wrong. It was asking if he was going to give a refund to a customer who wanted it for the book that for Cyberfrog that wasn't even out yet. So it goes to show that really got under Ethan's skin too, because he was starting to get that a lot from a lot of people, rightfully so, based entirely on Ethan's behavior. And we will be getting into Ethan's behavior in probably multiple.
It got under his skin so much that he ended up sending his fucking faggot, flaggot fan base to go and do it to other people making comics.
Yes, but also there are multiple episodes where we covered Ethan's behavior, where he's had public meltdowns and fucking like screaming at people and that kind of stuff. On our previous channel, covered in the BitChute, the very suspicious episodes he's had where he has had romantic relationships with men over the internet.
This is
Stuff
sure
that is kind of speculation, but based on Ethan's behavior is kind of confirmed also. But we're pointing out
his reaction when faced with it makes him look more guilty.
Yeah, which again, that's just how we see it. We're pointing out that that's just how we see it, but also at the same time, his reaction is his
freely
reaction.
Admitting that. We will freely admit that. That is not something that we have any confirmation of, and I am not claiming we have confirmation of it.
But the thing is, what we do have confirmation of is his reaction to these things. All of that stuff is confirmed. It's just that what we interpret from it is our speculation, which we admit to. Anyways, but back to the idea of better comics. The quality.
I can't even say it without fucking saying it that way.
Better comics. Yeah, it just sounds like you should say it with the Pac-like voice. Where are you with the Mondor? That kind of shit. But as far as the actual quality of the storytelling,
but here's the problem: it was the Mondor.
It actually was the Mondor. That's true.
So that's another thing Comicsgate doesn't have.
Yes, Comicsgate doesn't even have the Mondor.
They don't have that in relation with the Pac-Lads. The Pac-Lads at least knew the name of their ship.
Yes, they have a ship. First of all, they have a spaceship. That's pretty cool too. Anyways, so the storytelling sucked. Objective, not my opinion, not my fucking interpretation of it. The storytelling was objectively bad.
My opinion is that I didn't like it.
Yeah, my opinion is that I didn't like it. But the thing is that multiple experienced creators and also editors who have worked in writing and comic books too have seen it and confirmed, yes, the story is badly told. There are many missing elements to actually make this a real story. As it is, it just reads as a fanfic for not just Jawbreakers, but pretty much the majority of Comicsgate's comics, including Cyberfrog, also is missing like a story arc. The first Cyberfrog book was all set up and no payoff, to the disappointment even of Comicsgate supporters, where they kind of they dropped out of the movement after Cyberfrog came out. So the whole claim of wanting better comics, they couldn't even deliver themselves. They couldn't. In fact, most people who supported Comicsgate were like, these comics can't even rise above like the SJW comics that they complain about. I remember one person in particular said that, I used to look forward to that America Chavez book by Marvel because it was just such a hilarious train wreck. But Jawbreakers Lost Souls isn't even funny on accident. It's just shit. And it's like, these are supporters of the movement.
Actually, it's an important thing to mention because he wanted to make a comic like Rob Liefeld, who is exactly who nobody should ever take inspiration from.
Yeah, Rob Liefeld's a terrible writer. He's never been good. He's never been funny or interesting. He just basically drew his way into fame. He lucked into it. He was given fame just because he drew
He's good
comics.
Proof that if you have the ability to draw a picture, you can be bad at it and still be more popular than a talented writer.
Yeah, that's another very classic.
But one of the other hallmarks of Rob Liefeld's fucking ability to create anything is that his stories are also boring.
Yeah.
They're not even entertaining from a perspective of being funny.
And you can see people make a case for like his art at least is dynamic and very stylish, and it's like, okay, you can at least make that case even if it's wrong. And I'll give some people, like, his art is distinct at least. The thing is that his writing is completely indistinct from anything. But here's the biggest problem with wanting better comics is not only were the stories shit, most of them, and this very much doesn't get talked about in Comicsgate, but several disastrous episodes of how comics were poorly handled in shipping, bad quality control, bad editing in the books, printing mistakes, editing mistakes, shipping mistakes. Some comics were shipped in, no joke, Ziploc sandwich bags, which you're not supposed to put a comic in because the plastic for a sandwich bag is kind of acidic to the ink, and it does damage eventually, over time anyways. But the thing is that they couldn't even get the regular poly bag for a comic book, which is incredibly cheap. You can get at least 10 of them for $1, maybe 100 of them for like $10, something like that. And some comics were shipped with no bag, just as junk mail, like you would a magazine, except they were not even shipped with like sort of the care of a magazine. So a lot of people got smashed up, dented up books right out of the gate. And then even
and these
after
are people who will want collector's items. This is another problem that they have, is that there's like, oh, this is going to be a collect. This will be worth a ton of money for me to flip on the internet someday.
Yeah, that's a whole other argument that's not written down, but is completely correct. Is that comic book nerds in general, but especially Comicsgate, don't see comic books as even comic books. They see them as collector's items, like a fucking Funko Pop, essentially. That's all they see comic books as. And comics should be treated as more, and Comicsgate not only doesn't want to treat it as more, but you can see through practice. They were shipping their comics as junk, smashing them up, and terrible writing. So clearly they didn't care about comics being any better.
They freely admit they don't want to read these comics.
But also a lot of them can't fucking admit it either.
Why make a comic in that case, though?
Yeah, that's the real mystery. Is if you don't really care about writing, and there would be another.
We already know why. Later. We know why. It's not a mystery to us.
This is something we've answered in several of our older videos, but again, we can
just
go into this on its own.
We have to go on with this shit.
Anyways.
How much more agonizing are we going to have to make this for all of you?
Yeah, for anyone else to even catch on. The thing is, we know that people don't catch on because we're correct. People catch on because they themselves get jilted by the movement they support. That's the only reason why anyone does. We're doing these videos for people who are really unfamiliar with the movement. If you're not familiar with Comicsgate, we're here to try to at least inform you of all the disastrous things that have been going on in the movement.
Which is a lot. It's going to take a while.
Yeah, it's going to take a long fucking time. Especially the way we do it, because we fucking really derail we openly admit we derail constantly. But for good reason, at least.
There's so much on the plate.
There's so much to talk about.
You gotta go back.
So much going on.
You gotta go back.
But anyways, we'll wrap up this part of the episode with the third idea of what Comicsgate was supposed to be. Was something that's less publicly spoken, or was less publicly spoken when people would even talk about it, which was oddly rare. When a lot of people in Comicsgate wouldn't really talk about what Comicsgate was supposed to be. They would just, ship wouldn't go. That's pretty much all it was.
Yeah, not even talking about how they want better comics.
Yeah,
just basically being like, I like to buy comics. I love Spider-Man.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. Like if you didn't confront Comicsgate directly, what they would say on their own was not of very much substance. But the third, idea, not publicly spoken much.
Their entire movement is zero substance. It's like the fuck.
Yeah, but the thing is, you could still often find people in the movement demanding this, and it was that creators of Marvel and DC should be beholden to the whims of the fans. And this idea as a principle is really a non-starter.
Yeah, it's really, they're just dead on wrong. That's one of the things is we have to bring up this stuff. We brought it up before. We have to go backwards to
Yeah, we've addressed this in many previous videos
or
throughout,
people who
mostly
don't
throughout
understand.
2019 and 2018.
There's been many times where we'd explain something in a video and somebody would be like, "What do you mean by this?" And it's like, "Oh Lord, please don't let me be fucking misunderstood."
Misunderstood, yes. Because the thing is, we would say something very plainly and straightforward and give as
Trying to
much
get it over
detail as
with.
possible, and people in the movement would still be confused or say, no, that's not right because I don't feel like it's right.
I don't think that's what that means. Actually, this is what that means. No, you're wrong.
But yeah, here's the thing. The whole idea of the fans should dictate what these mega corporations should make. It's like, okay,
Or even
go
artistic.
ahead and fucking every second of your life, please feel free to think that way. But the real truth is that this principle is a complete non-starter, especially to any real creator of anything. And it's something only a non creator would ever demand, as the concept of art is for the creator to get their point across. It's not for somebody else to come in and say, no, you got to do it like this. That's what actually the book Misery is
I
about.
don't
It's
like it.
about a
Yeah,
fan who demands fucking an entitlement over what a writer
literally
makes.
a fangirl.
Yes. Um, but as one of our peers, Kurt Vonnegut, once said, write to please just one person. If you open a window and make love to the world, so to speak, your story will get pneumonia. And I personally would have summed that up as pandering to fans will give you AIDS. But, I guess Kurt Vonnegut, his way of putting it is
Kurt
okay
Vonnegut. I guess
too.
we're just on the same level as
Yeah.
him.
Just generally, I guess we could see eye to eye about some stuff. We understand. I think Kurt Vonnegut would understand where we come from, and I think we understand where he comes from. But maybe that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. But that's also just Kurt Vonnegut's opinion about how if Marvel and DC should be beholden to the fans. That if you disagree with what Kurt Vonnegut feels about that, and you disagree with what we feel about it, I guess you're more than entitled and able to
For
prove how
me,
you would know better than Kurt Vonnegut. If you're in Comicsgate and you think you know better than Kurt Vonnegut about how fans should kind of shut their faggot mouths, that kind of thing.
me, it's not about protecting a major fucking corporation either. That's not. I
Yeah.
don't care about that.
In
That's
fact,
not.
we had the solution to this. The solution to this is easy. Stop buying Marvel and DC. That was our solution in 2015. Comicsgate did not have the balls to hold up to that one. I guess that was too tough a
That was
principle
easy.
for Comicsgate.
That was easy to do. But quite simply, is an artist should be free to fucking make whatever they want, even if what they're making is wrong and a reader is right. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
Yes,
It's
even if
your
you
own
don't
thing.
like it and you're right, like if you like here's the thing that we were saying about Jawbreakers, objectively flawed, piss poor writing, but I would never say that Richard should write it the way I want or that he shouldn't be able to write it.
Well, I would say that he should write it the way I want, but I would never make him do it.
Yes, I would never say, "Hey, we need to start a movement to stop Richard C. Meyer from writing the terrible dog shit, devoid of story, devoid of soul." There's absolutely no soul. He has zero dimension. One of the only things that Comicsgate ever innovated on was Richard C. Meyer invented the zero-dimensional character in Jawbreakers, where none of his characters had any personality. None of them were distinct from each other in forms of personality. Only visually were they distinct from each other, which doesn't mean anything.
And sometimes not even visually.
Yeah, a lot of them were fucking not distinct visually either. You could fucking mistake one for the other. They didn't even really have their names told in the story, and none of them had any backstory
It's
to
not
speak
like
of.
it's not like it even mattered because they're just boring. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is normally you only have a
And
one-dimensional
that's
character.
on you if
A
you're,
bad
especially if you're an
character is a
experienced storyteller,
one-dimensional
that's on you as the writer.
how do you make it so that the character has 0 dimensions? It's like he had to fucking create some new form of math.
He had to create a new form of storytelling that's more devoid than even incompetent storytelling because, like, to bring up Sonichu again, at least you can understand Sonichu's motivations. You can't understand any motivations for any character in fucking Jawbreaker's Lost Souls because they're not given any motivation for anything. And that is objectively incompetent. That is an objective flaw in storytelling. If you fail to give your characters motivations, you have failed as a writer. So, therefore, ipso facto, plus post QED, fucking whatever. Hey, what do you think of my Latin? Anyways, so yeah, that wraps up this
If not
part of the
adding
episode.
that, give a dog a bone.
Anyway, so we'll continue on with this episode in the next part.
3609. My bacon's my
Smelling
bacon
fine.
smelling fine.
Why is he cooking? He's cooking pork? He's got
He's
swine?
fucking he's Islamic and he's swine, my brethren. And it's like, but you're Islamic. You're not supposed to eat pork.
See, now that was a good story. Don't be a menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood. Was a well-told story with
That scene,
relatable characters that had motivations.
that one scene had more depth to it than the entirety of everything Comicsgate has ever produced.
And again,
Going
not
to
our
prison,
opinion.
him going to prison, or he gets thrown in jail
He
for
was
crimes.
arrested for being black on a Friday night, which still makes more logical sense than any of the goofy shit that happens in Comicsgate's comics.
And he's thrown in a cell with a guy who's cooking bacon in a hot plate who is Islamic.
Yes,
And
even
all he
that
does is
still makes more sense.
and he's literally just doing nothing but spewing out fucking rhyming catchphrases.
Yes, knick knack paddywhack, give a dog a bone. Anyways, so that wraps up this part of this episode. We'll continue on with the following parts. I don't even know if we'll conclude with the ethics and principles of Comicsgate in practice and failure in practice. Next time, remember, should have listened to Shitty Webcomics.